headlines from an African perspective.
The Integrated Face-Classification has warned that famine is already unfolding in Gaza, where millions face severe shortages of food, water and medical supplies under a brutal siege. Oxfam says Israel's blockade has created life-threatening conditions while international action remains insufficient. Joining us now from Gaza is Chris McIntosh, Oxfam's Humanitarian Response Adviser, to explain the situation on the ground and what urgent steps are needed. Chris, good evening.
Good evening.
I'm very happy to connect with you this evening because you're straight right there and you will be able to tell us exactly what's happening on the ground. What does the IPC alert mean in practical terms from civilians in Gaza right now? And what are you seeing and hearing on the ground?
Yeah, thank you very much, and good evening to all your listeners and viewers. What the IPC announcement means is actually exactly what we thought would happen right when this blockade was implicated in the very beginning of March. So the blockade effectively is about to turn 5 months old, and since then, very, very small amounts of food and other needed items have entered the Gaza Strip, and it's created what we're seeing now, which is people that are emaciated from lack of any food at all. We're seeing people that are clearly weakened from malnutrition. We're seeing marketplaces that support this with hardly any food items. And what food items are available are going at exorbitant prices, cost prohibitive, mind you, for most of the population in the Gaza Strip. And so that's where we sit right now. And I can't emphasize this enough. It's exactly what Oxfam and our peer agencies have been warning for many months, what would happen due to the bureaucratic and administrative obstacles to access that Israel has put in place. We cannot get goods into the Gaza Strip. And that's the state of affairs as it sits right now.
No. So I guess, from what you have just said, it's a pure sign of if nothing can come in, even operations are affected.
Let me say that things are coming in, but it's absolutely minimal. And frankly, the Israeli authorities have done this, have orchestrated this very deliberately and very systematically over the months in order to be able to say, yes, some goods are getting into Gaza. For example, there are trucks that are getting into Gaza, not nearly to the degree that's necessary to sustain life in the Gaza Strip. Additionally, there are airdrops that are happening. And all of this is nothing but token gestures that barely begin to meet the needs. And on the airdrops specifically, if I may say, this is quite a stunt to airdrop in aid in order to portray the picture that the Gaza Strip is inaccessible, that the Gaza Strip is some particular whole very separate from the rest of the world. That couldn't be further from the truth. It's not a mountainous area. It's not a remote island in the middle of the ocean. The Gaza Strip sits on a Mediterranean coastal plain that's extremely accessible. All that needs to happen is Israel needs to open up the many gates that lead into the Gaza Strip, take advantage of the existing roads, and allow the aid to come in efficiently. Not pulling stunts like allowing airdrops that barely begin to meet the needs, airdrops that land on top of tents that people are living in, airdrops that are landing within restricted military areas that make it extremely dangerous for people to even approach at the risk of being shot dead. Airdrops that end up in the sea and people risk their lives going in that way. So these are all token, completely for show efforts in order to distract from the real issue here. And the real issue here is the systematic oppression and the systematic control that's happening in the Gaza Strip of the Gazans themselves by Israel. That's what it's really about. And anything that Israel says or does that's quote unquote humanitarian is merely merely a token.
Are these airdrops reaching the most in need?
No, and thank you for the question. No, absolutely not. None of the aid is reaching those most in need. Um, as humanitarians, that's precisely what we do, is we identify those most in need. And in the case of Gaza right now, when we say those most in need, what we mean is the people who need food in order not to die in the very near future. And that's what we are trained to do. That is why we exist as humanitarians. This is our bread and butter. This is the work that we do. And as part of the systematized oppression, the architect of oppression that Israel has in place, they have conducted a full frontal assault on the humanitarian community, marginalized us completely, kept us from being able to do our jobs, and therefore make the Gazan population beholden to the few points where they might receive aid, be it airdrops or these distribution centers. But none of it, again, is about any humanitarian assistance. It's about controlling the population.
Your job as a humanitarian is to be there. And I would imagine that right now you're facing restrictions and challenges. Can you take us through those?
Absolutely. There's no end to the challenges, particularly when it comes to access. And that starts as an international, that starts when I leave to even enter the Gaza Strip, which without all the extra steps in place would take within 5 hours. As it is, last entry that I came in on, over 13 hours because of all the bureaucracy and all the steps that have to take place. So it starts there for me as a humanitarian. And then once we're here, and I'm trying to work with colleagues to make sure that we can get to the places to do our programming, that is further frustrated by all the different areas and the different names that the Israeli authorities have come up with for restricted areas that need close coordination. And when I say that, just to give a small example, in order to do coordination, there's, of course, this has to be submitted at least 24 hours in advance. And then step by step, you need to be in touch with the Israelis and their civil military liaison in order to even go down the road a few kilometers. And they can stop you whenever they want to stop you. They can deny your requests whenever they wanted to deny your requests. And another tool that they use is ambiguity and uncertainty. And they do this consistently. So even when very serious steps are taken by them, for example, to establish evacuation orders in various areas, they're not clear on exactly what that means, on what coordination that needs to happen, if humanitarian agencies are exempt or not. And they'll frequently flip back and forth. So this is all part and parcel of a very deliberate, a very thought out plan to confuse and frustrate access, again, in order to sideline humanitarian agencies. And that's fundamentally the problem right now.
Oxfam has called for international action. This is not the first time one hears the call for international action. What should world governments be doing right now? Because these sentiments have been echoed on and on and on since the beginning of this entire war.
Well, all governments should be taking a deep look internally and reaching down and holding Israel accountable, demanding a ceasefire, demanding that all access routes open up immediately in order to end the starvation, in order to end the famine-like conditions that exist in the Gaza Strip, and put an end to this. And additionally, start asking difficult questions of the state of Israel, like why all Gazans are held in contempt for the actions of a few. It's one thing to take on an enemy. It's another thing to take on a civilian population and to execute collective punishment. That's what needs to happen. And these need to be political solutions, and countries need to cease and desist with the token gestures and the lack of substantive action. This is needed now in order to save lives, because literally lives are in the balance.
The humanitarian aid issue, they say it might be diverted to Hamas, and this is Israel. How do you respond to that particular statement, that humanitarian aid might be diverted to Hamas. Maybe that's why this blockade and the manner in which they're administering it.
Right. Yeah. I'm not in a position to say exactly how much goes into the hands of Hamas. Right now, Hamas is very fragmented. What I will say is that's not a good enough reason to cease all goods coming into the Gaza Strip for several months and then turn it back on at a trickle pace. Again, that's the difference between taking on your enemy and prosecuting them with military action and executing collective punishment against the entirety of a population. So I'm not going to say how much aid has gone into the hands of Hamas or not, but that's not the real point. The real point is that is not an excuse for an entire population, 2.5 million people, literally suffering, literally starving, because of the possibility of this aid falling into the wrong hands. We're well past the point where that should even be considered. This is a human manufactured disaster that's happening right now, the likes of which we have truly not seen. And I don't mean to use superlatives or become hyperbolic in the least. We have the evidence. The evidence is there that this is the reality. People are starving. People are malnourished. And that should not be happening anywhere.
Are there any groups there in Gaza that are completely cut off from assistance at this stage?
Completely cut off from what kind of assistance? Just for
from
clarity?
the humanitarian aid and, as well as ongoing protection, whom are just cut off completely?
Certainly there are. We reach as many people that we can with the limited programming that we can do. We'd like to do more programming. Were the blockade lifted? Were there a ceasefire? But not all the agencies that are on the ground right now can reach all the population. So certainly there are those most vulnerable, as I mentioned before, those who do need the aid the most. But the less that we're able to do our jobs, the less we're able to reach those people. So the situation is indeed dire. As I said, that the evidence is there, and why people, particularly Israeli officials, continue to waffle on this topic and act as though there isn't sufficient evidence for it, I don't understand. I'm on the ground and I can tell you it's happening. I'm seeing it with my own eyes. And furthermore, there's also this rhetoric going around that things are complicated. Again, it's not complicated. The only thing that needs to happen is for access of goods to come into Gaza using the existing roads, the existing gates, and a ceasefire, and put an end to this.
Let me finally take something out of you, and I hear you have pleaded with the world, but if you had the world's attention right now for 30 seconds, what else would you say?
That's a great question. We live in dark times right now. And I would say of all the conflicts going on right now, it's not appropriate to rank them, but Gaza would be certainly up there among the various conflicts, and certainly one of the darkest pieces of humanity right now. It is incumbent upon us as humanitarians, it is incumbent upon us as citizens of our countries and citizens of the world, to be beacons of light in order to shine on the darkness and expose evil for what it is. Now is the time. Now is the time to do that.
Chris, there aren't any better words to capture what you have just said. Thank you very much for your time this evening.
Thank you.
That was Chris McIntosh, Humanitarian Response Adviser with Oxfam in Gaza, speaking to us in the wake of the IPC's Famine Alert.